Cheers, beer runners, and welcome to my latest product review. Several weeks ago, you probably remember I did my first ever unboxing video for the new AfterShokz Aeropex bone conduction headphones. So I promised that I would be back with a review. I am finally coming through with that promise. I'm so sorry it took me so long. August was an insane month and just fell behind in everything that I had planned to do. So I'm back, I'm here with the official product review and can't wait to tell you about the features that I'm most excited about with these new headphones. To kick things off, some very important feedback that I received after my unboxing video. I realized, or it was pointed out to me rather, that I didn't actually ever demonstrate what the headphones look like while they were on your head. So I'm starting this week's video with the AfterShokz showing exactly how they fit on your head, especially with bone conduction headphones. I know it seems a little unique or interesting or unclear if you've never used them before, but basically the way the bone conduction headphones work is, like I said, they do fit over your ear and then rest just outside of your ear on your cheekbone. So you're not actually blocking out any sound from coming into your ear. That's kind of the key design thing with the AfterShokz, is you can still hear everything around you. You're still aware of all of your surroundings, but through the vibrations that travel through the AfterShokz into your cheekbone, you can actually still listen to audio, music, podcasts, audiobooks, etc. Whatever suits your fancy. So sorry for not showing that clearly in the unboxing video, but as you can see, this is how the AfterShokz fit comfortably on your head. One last thing before we jump into the review itself. This is going to be more of sort of a generalized overview of specifically focusing on the newest features and updates to the Aeropex headphones specifically. So the features and updates that they made to the Aeropex from the last model, the AfterShokz Treks Airs. So if you are completely unfamiliar with AfterShokz or their headphones or anything like that, I strongly recommend you go back and watch my review of the Treks Air. I do a much deeper dive into just AfterShokz in general, very in-depth into the controls, the deep dive into the features, etc. So if you're looking for just more information on AfterShokz in general, check that review out. But if you are familiar with AfterShokz and just looking for a review of the features and upgrades they made with the Aeropex, then this is the video for you. An obvious upgrade to touch on right off the bat is just the change in the design and the profile of the headphones themselves. It's pretty easy to see, I think, if you compare them side by side. They did actually manage to make these new AfterShokz Aeropex headphones even smaller and even lighter. The weight is now down below an ounce, so these are hardly noticeable when you wear them. They fit incredibly comfortably on your head, and like I said, just hardly noticeable at all. They've gotten them so light, but you can kind of see, like I said, just by noticing them, they've shrunk the size of the headphones. So this is the original Treks Air, and then with the Aeropex, you can just see that they've just slimmed down any excess weight, any excess material, again, just to trim weight wherever they can, all while including more features in the actual headphones themselves. So they are a little bit denser up towards the front just because they've packed all of the materials and, again, all of the features, all the tech that they need into a smaller area. But again, this has helped them limit the overall weight of the headphones and makes for a much more comfortable fit when you're running with these. Aside from the upgraded design and weight of the Aeropex headphones, I'm going to go through the features or upgrades that I am going to rank from absolutely most meaningful, most impactful, most noticeable to some of the more trivial updates and things. Obviously still nice upgrades, but just weren't as noticeable when testing out the headphones. So first things first, to focus on the biggest thing that I noticed, the biggest upgrade I realized with the new Aeropex headphones is the battery life. They promised that it was going to be upgraded and they were not lying. I can make it through an entire week of training without charging these. Occasionally, if I'm doing some really long runs on the weekend, I may need to charge them. That's also usually a factor if sometimes I'll wear these around the house in the morning when I'm getting ready to listen to my podcast or anything like that. So depending on how much time and how much audio I'm actually listening to, occasionally I might need a midweek charge just to make sure that I have enough battery to make it through my second long run of the week. But for the most part, easily get through a full week of training, no problem. Plenty of charge. It lets you know when the battery's running low, and just have been so impressed with how long lasting the battery life really is on these things. Another thing to notice is I actually accidentally left these on one time when my wife and I took a full week's vacation, and when I got back they were still on. I realized they were on, just for kicks decided to check to see how the battery life was. If you're not familiar with AfterShokz, just a tap of the volume button will let you know how the battery is. Battery was still high, fully charged, no problem. So they weren't lying also when they said that in standby mode the battery life can last long. I think they said up to 20 days, and since it made it 7 days still with a high, almost full charge, I am definitely accustomed to believe that. Upgrade number 2 was actually one of the first things that I noticed the first time wearing these headphones, and I'll put them on again to demonstrate, and that is just the change to the button layouts and the button designs for the controls for these headphones. So if you're not familiar with AfterShokz, You have one multi-purpose button on your left-hand side, which is sort of your main control, and then you have volume controls on the right-hand side under the sort of arm that's tucked behind the ear. They did change the button layout a little bit, so because of the new charging port, the new design of the charging port, the volume keys are actually bumped forward a little bit, and the multi-purpose button is actually a lot smaller than on the AfterShokz Treks Titaniums or the Treks Airs. Although it took a little bit longer to get used to, I've definitely missed buttons on both sides a couple times just transitioning from the Airs to the Aeropex. What I did find, especially with the multi-purpose button, is that it was a lot more responsive. One of the controls that I really like about the AfterShokz is that a double tap on the button will either skip to the next track if you're listening to music, or will skip forward in a podcast. I use that a ton, especially on long runs when I'm running through multiple podcasts, because most podcasts have the advertisements at the beginning, and I'll just double tap to skip through. A lot of times with the previous models, just because the design of the button and it not being as responsive, I would accidentally pause and play the music as opposed to actually skipping forward. And so the new button, I will say, is a lot more responsive once you get used to the new placement and new size of the button itself. As I mentioned, part of the reason for the shift in the buttons, moving them forward, was the introduction of the new magnetic charger. Some people I know will be frustrated that it is yet another unique charger. It doesn't match any of your other electronics, so if you do lose one, you're a little bit SOL, but the nice thing is AfterShokz is kind enough to include two copies of the cable in your box, in your package when you order the Aeropex, so just in case you do lose one, you have a backup. I think that's pretty generous, especially since they are requiring a unique charger, giving you a backup just in case, since it is incredibly easy to lose these, especially if you're traveling for races, things like that. Just one last thing about the magnetic charger, it is so much easier to connect than the micro USB, so that for me by far makes up for the frustration of needing a new wire, is how much easier it is to connect than the micro USB cable was. The other thing that I do like is they changed where the notification light is that lets you know that it's charging. It's much larger, and on the side of the AfterShokz, where I charge my headphones, I don't know if this is true for everyone, it's just a lot easier for me to tell once it's done charging. The light changes from red to blue, and because it's a lot larger and in a much more prominent position, it's just a lot easier to tell from far away, oh, my headphones are done charging, so I can go take them off the hook. The next feature that was most noticeable and most appreciated about these new Aeropex is the fact that they are completely 100% waterproof. This is the first pair of AfterShokz that are waterproof as opposed to just water resistant. I have this lower in my list as far as things I noticed when testing these out, mostly because I didn't really have any solid rainstorms to actually test this out in. I did sweat plenty on those incredibly hot, humid July and early August days, so I did definitely put some of that waterproofness to the test. But I know in the past, even when they just had the water resistant models, I've run plenty of times in the pouring rain, have had no issues, so I am wholly confident now that these are upgraded to actually waterproof, that rain will continue to not be an issue. One of the other BibRave pros actually did wear these in the shower with him while listening to music, and confirmed that there are absolutely no connectivity issues. Just another thing to note, which I think is nice about the magnetic charger, they introduced that charger partially because to actually certify the AfterShokz as waterproof. It's a lot easier to waterproof a magnetic charger as opposed to using a micro USB, so that's the reason for the new charger. But the nice thing is, if these are wet when you're plugging them into charge, the notification light, the AfterShokz themselves will vibrate, and the notification light will flash different colors to let you know, hey, just so you know, these are water, or there's water in the charging port. You're going to want to unplug these so you don't short circuit. So again, I didn't have any issues with that, A, because I was hardly charging them, but B, just didn't have a lot of rainstorms or anything like that to test the waterproof in. The last upgrade that I'll touch on, which by no means, I don't want to belittle it by placing it at the end of the list, just personally, it was the thing that I noticed the least, or at least found it wasn't as meaningful or useful to me during the test period, although nice, and that is just the improved audio quality with the Aeropex headphones. AfterShokz, I've always been so impressed with how clear the audio has been. This is the first time, my first pair of AfterShokz was the first time I had ever tested bone conduction software, or bone conduction technology, and just had no idea what to expect the first time that I put them on. I still continue to be impressed with just how clear the audio is coming through, even with everything else coming around me. It just doesn't make sense that the audio can be that clear just playing through vibrations. But what I do appreciate about the Aeropex is, for me, I'm somewhat hard of hearing, and with the Treks Air and the Treks Titanium, especially if I'm listening to podcasts and outside where there's a lot of noise going on around me, I pretty much had to crank the headphones up to full blast to make sure that I was hearing the audio on the podcast clearly. And with the AfterShokz, that is not the case. I'm much closer to half volume, if not just a little bit above the halfway point, just because the audio comes through so much more clearly. There's a lot less sound lost being pushed to the outside, and it's a much more concentrated blast of audio, so it's a lot easier to hear. I don't have to crank the audio up as loud. That's also nice when I'm inside, because on the old models, when you had the volume cranked up full blast, the headphones did vibrate pretty noticeably, like just to the touch. You could kind of feel them buzzing, and you could feel the buzz against your cheekbone. You could also kind of hear the audio if you were anywhere in the proximity of the headphones. So I do appreciate being able to listen to these at a quieter volume and still hear just as clearly or just as loudly internally without projecting as much audio out. So again, the feature that I think just it's definitely great. I love the upgrade, just wasn't as important to me as some of the other things I listed. So there you have it. Again, better late than never. I'm sorry that I didn't get this out sooner. If you want to read the full review, I have one posted on my website, so I'll link to that in the show notes below. But I hope you enjoyed the full review of the Aeropex headphones. Again, if you want a deeper dive just into all the features of AfterShokz, please make sure you check out my Treks Air review. I go a lot more into the actual specific controls of the headphones and kind of how the bone conduction technology works. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're having a great week. Let me slip these on one more time just so again I can be sure I'm demonstrating exactly how they look and how comfortable the fit is, how lightweight, and just how perfect these headphones are for running. So I will continue to preach or sing the praises for these headphones. Anybody who's looking for any kind of running headphone or any kind of Bluetooth wireless headphones in general, these are always my top recommendation. This is my 4th pair of headphones, mostly just because I keep getting the upgrades. I've had one pair go missing. That's the only pair that I've had to replace. I've never had a pair break or anything like that. And I have pairs that are years old and still running strong. So continue to be incredibly impressed with the technology AfterShokz is putting out. I've heard rumor of more models and more upgrades on the horizon, so can't wait to see what they have in store. But if you're looking for the latest model, I would highly recommend these, or just looking for some new headphones. 10 out of 10 stars. Love these headphones. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email, shoot me a comment below. I'd be happy to answer them. Like I said, I've been running in these for years and just can't get enough of them. So thanks for tuning into the review. I hope you enjoyed it. And until the next time, I'll see you around. Cheers.